All right, Quentin, here we are for episode 14 of the Nervous System Training Podcast. We've got a lot of good videos to go over today. We're going to talk about plantar fasciitis to start. That's a common issue. Obviously, the nervous system training, the foundation's the feet, so there's a lot of ties in with how to manage plantar fasciitis, how to prevent it, so we'll talk about that. And then we'll dive into BJ Penn. He's got some crazy stuff going on in the current news, but we'll touch on that. We're really going to dive more into his training and preparation earlier in his career. So we'll talk about the transformation he did when he transitioned into nervous system training and added that to his routine. But yeah, let's dive right in.
Let's do it. So what question did they have on plantar fasciitis exactly?
It's questions I've gotten on the calls, and it's been a few of them, but it's people are often hesitate to start a new training program when they're in the pain. So it's what I want to do is talk about the advantage of actually training for it rather than just resting. And then, just talk about how to manage it from a nervous system training perspective.
Okay, well, plantar fasciitis, this is a pretty common injury that people get. It's a type of tendonitis or tendinopathy, and a lot of this is the result of too much stress on the foot tendon, and it can't heal properly. And the fibrous matrix of the tendon starts to get damaged. It starts to accumulate inflammation. The matrix kind of starts to fall apart. And it can be super annoying and super painful for a long time. I had this for a little bit. And it took me like a few months of trying to fix it. But the one thing that really kills people when it comes to plantar fasciitis is they don't do a protocol all the way through to fully heal it. They usually stop once it starts feeling better. And when it comes to tendinopathies, just because you're not feeling it doesn't mean it's gone. It could still be lingering, or maybe it's sustainable enough where the nerve endings aren't firing off a pain signal anymore, but it could still be there sitting with the tissue. And the longer the tendinopathy sits there, the more it'll degrade the tendon over time, and it'll turn into tendinosis. And that's usually when the tissue is not communicating with the central nervous system and it starts to degrade. And the material starts to turn gray. And the best way to fix this is with tendon issues is blood flow. Like, you got to get blood into the foot. And depending on the grade of tendonitis you have, like there's grade 1 through 4. Grade 1 is, you experience like some agitation of the tendon, maybe hours or the next day after physical activity. That's not so bad. That's something that you can fix. You can even still do your sport and heal it at the same time. Now, grade 2 is, I believe you feel agitation right after activity or during. It's not enough to kind of like make you have to sit out, but it can bother you, and afterwards it can feel annoying. Telltale sign of plantar fasciitis showing up is if the bottom of your feet hurt first thing in the morning. Where you get out of bed and you step your feet on the ground, it feels like you're stepping on Legos. That's a sign that the tendonitis is really, really starting to get bad. And it can be that you're on your way to like grade 3. When you're in grade 3, that's pain before activity, pain during activity, and pain after activity. When you're at grade 3, you really should shut down training and just focus on getting this healed. Doing things that are not going to stress out the tendon any further. Focusing on a physical therapy protocol like towel crunches is really good, getting blood flow into that tendon. Also, the frozen water bottle technique, it's an old school method to help calm the nerve endings down, promote more blood circulation to help the tissue heal, and doing things to kind of like stretch and massage the foot tendon. When I started doing also dorsiflexion when you sleep. So I'll kind of break down the step-by-step process that usually fixes it. Now, there's more that goes into this. There's more about like fascial training and different toe curling methods to help improve the fascial layer around the plantar fascia. I don't know. I don't have all that protocol fully memorized or fully understand. So right now I just know the quote unquote older school method. But what I've used for a lot of guys is frozen water bottle first thing in the morning. You roll your foot on it. for like 10 to 15 minutes. It really helps calm the nerve ending down. It kind of creates more length out of like the tissue, and it promotes more blood flow. And then you want to follow that up with some towel crunches. So sitting on the ground, rolling the towel up until the bottom of your foot is burning. And when you sleep at night, it really, really helps to get a dorsiflexion strap, something that you can put over your foot, and it holds your foot in dorsiflexion. Because when you sleep, your foot falls into extension, and that puts a lot of stress. That really shortens that foot tendon while you're sleeping. That creates a ton of agitation, and that's why your foot hurts first thing in the morning. So if you can keep your foot in the dorsiflex position, if that one guy, he used like an air cast because he couldn't find like the strap he was looking for. Just anything to put you in a dorsiflex position that'll hold your foot like this while you sleep. And you can get these straps, like you can find them at Kroger, like in like the old people section, where there's like knee braces and stuff like that and walking sticks. Like you can find them there. They're pretty available. But sleeping with that each night, wake up, roll it out the water bottle, doing the towel crunches. And also it helps to do the PVC pipes, doing the log walks in particular, something to kind of really help lengthen, stretch, and promote more blood flow into that tissue. And the key to this is consistency. You've got to run this protocol every day. Maybe take one day off, like a Sunday, but you got to work it and work it and work it until this thing heals. And then after it heals, work it again for another 2 weeks. Like, get rid of this, because this will get annoying. If it degrades even further, you can risk, like if you're at a grade 3, grade 4, you keep working it, you don't really take care of it properly, you can snap that bitch. Like, that tissue will rip off. Like, that happened to Dominic Cruz. And a lot of people, high arch athletes, are very susceptible to plantar fasciitis because their plantar fascia is naturally tighter from the shape of their foot bones. Mm-hmm. And Dominic Cruz, I can't remember who he's fighting, but he was struggling with plantar fasciitis. He's a very tough motherfucker. He did not want to take days off. He does not back down to shit. He didn't want to back out of his fight, so he just did camp after camp, trying to manage it, not fully manage it. And eventually in one of his fights, it just ripped off the bone, and he fought 2 more rounds on that. And he ended up losing that fight. And that's rough. You do that, you tear your plantar fascia, like, that is a long recovery process. It's probably going to require surgery. And the tissue will never be the same. Like, it'll always be 80% of what it once was, because it's just a ton of damage. I actually tore, I had a slight tear in my plantar fascia back in high school. I remember, I didn't know what it was until later on in life. I figured out, like, oh shit, like I used to wear ankle braces all the time. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was because I had weaker ankles and I had weak foot tendons. I had a weak plantar fascia. Didn't know it, but it always felt good. And you'll see this a lot with guys who wear like those sleeves on their ankles from like Muay Thai. You ever see those?
Yep.
A lot of guys will wear that if they're lacking tensile strength in their plantar fascia, because it creates an artificial tightness, and it kind of helps assist their tendon, kind of like like K-tape or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so the ankle brace, I really liked the feeling of that tightness around my foot. I felt like a little faster and more stable. And I remember I was doing the same sort of backpedaling technique that you see all these basketball players blowing out their Achilles tendon, where I was backpedaling, I stop, shoot a foot back to like run forward, because I was the safety at the time. We were just running drills. And then when I stepped back, I felt like a popping sensation, like a slight popping / crunch. And I was like, oh, it immediately hurt. And it was the last practice of my senior year. Ooh. It was the last practice for our playoff game. And it was the last drill we were running right before, like, we finished practice. We watch film, we have like our dinner, we have, before, and then we have our game the next day. And I remember it happened. I was like, shit. I was like, oh, and it hurts. And I was like, what is going on? And I was like, okay, maybe it'll just go away. And I did not want to sit out for like our last game. So I just ignored it. And man, it was so freaking painful. And it took months until it went away. Didn't fully rehab it. And I eventually developed plantar fasciitis on that same foot years later. but I developed it from drumming because from like using bass pedals.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I would always push down on my big toe too hard. I wouldn't bounce my foot properly. So I'd kind of like push down like this instead of like planting my whole foot down on the bass pedals. And it just overstressed the tendon, turned into plantar fasciitis. And I was not very consistent on fixing it. And it was a struggle to get rid of this for like 3 months. I would work on it, it'd feel better. I would stop, go back into training. A week later, you'd come back. And I was just running through this cycle over and over and over again. And when I finally just stopped training, I gave myself 2 weeks and just focused on working on it every day, it started to turn around. And then I just kept it going. I eventually healed it. But it was annoying, man. It is an annoying ass injury. And this really highlights how dependent you are on your feet. A lot of people think, oh, it's foot strength. Like that doesn't really do shit. Like we need to squat. We need to get the hips stronger. You think that until you injure your foot. Like you can injure your hip muscles, right? Or your hamstrings, and you can kind of find a way to work around it. When you injure your foot, everything really shuts down. Yeah. The way you walk is compromised. The way you train, you can't. Like think about it. Like Jay, you ever stubbed your toe?
Yeah, it's excruciating.
It's excruciating. Like, have you ever tried walking after you stub your toe? Like you can't walk. You start. Yeah, it shuts your whole body down.
Yeah, there was one time we were doing it was kind of like the Murph test at the gym, but it was a little different. But like a high volume, hour-long test with a bunch of pull-ups, and there was some front squats. This was years ago, and I remember I dropped the weight on my toe. Like we'd been training for this. It was like a 3-month build-up, and today was the day. And as I was getting the weights for my barbell, I dropped the weight on my big toe. And this was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I still have my toenail still messed up, but I made it. I finished the hour, but yeah, my toe went numb about 10 minutes in. It was rough.
Did you lose your toenail?
Not fully, but my toenail's still half like yellow and chunky, and this was years ago at this point.
Oh no. Yeah, man, that's a bad one. And you know that brings up another point, and this is part of the reason why I feel like barefoot training is not really catching on. Especially in these gold standard professional and university like strength and conditioning programs, that they're not doing this barefoot training because it's deemed unsafe. Mm-hmm. Like accidents, you can drop a weight plate on your toe and shit like that. Which if you have super cats, you don't have to worry about that because you literally just put the weight on the back of the super cat. There's no real risk. But because you're using like squat racks and dumbbells and deadlift techniques and trap bar techniques, the chances of you dropping something on your foot are heavily increased. So just another reason why barbells are ruining sports performance.
Let me ask you this about the plantar fasciitis. Since I struggled with this for a while too, I ran a 50K without much training, and about halfway into the training, my plantar fascia just became a nightmare. So to get to what you're talking about, the dorsiflexion, like I experienced that when I would wake up, it was like my feet were just on fire, like for nothing. Like it just the first 3 steps of the day were the most excruciating steps. Eventually I found out like if I really pull into dorsiflexion, like that kind of opened up enough space that I could take those first few steps of the day less painful. And then I started training my dorsiflexion muscles, like the anterior tibialis and stuff like that. Is that it seemed like it helped, but I'm not really sure. But would you suggest stuff like that, like strengthening those dorsiflexion muscles to combat the tightness that kind of comes from that plantar flexion?
Yeah, 100%. Anything to promote dorsiflexion is going to help. And the tibialis muscles, anterior tib and posterior tib, those are what really like pull the foot up. So strengthening those will improve biomechanics because there could have been something deficient in maybe your dorsiflexion. So perhaps you were striking too much on the heel, or maybe too uneven on the foot, and when you train those tibialis muscles, you promote better dorsiflexion, and that could help with the way your foot hits the ground.
Yeah, it felt like it helped, but it's so annoying when it happens. It feels like nothing helps to an extent as well.
Yeah, it sucks. It's probably the most annoying injury. That and
ribs.
Wrist can suck.
Or I was saying
My
ribs.
fasciitis wrist can suck, but I think scapula issues, especially dominant side scapula issues, shoulder drop, where you see some guys like this, it's real common in like baseball pitchers and stuff,
Yeah.
the shoulder blades sliding off, or fighters, and this whole area feels agitated and annoying and it goes down your back. That's a real common one I see with a lot of throwers and fighters.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some BJ Penn stuff. See if I can find the one with Sean Shirk. Oh shit. Here we go.
All right. Yeah, so here's a good example where BJ Penn fought Sean Shirk, and Sean Shirk's a freaking monster. Like, people don't remember this guy. He was like one of the first like elite athletes to get into MMA. But if you look, BJ Penn is not in like super great shape in this fight. He's in okay shape. But he's never like really big into like heavy cardiovascular training. Like BJ had he's what we call talented. His nervous system, his neuromuscular efficiency was naturally really high. And so guys who have really high neuromuscular efficiency, sports comes easy for them. They learn things faster than everyone else. They acquire skills extremely quick. Their speed, their relaxation, their timing, their coordination, they're just really up there with soft qualities, with very minimal training. And a lot of people really have kind of trouble like grasping why some people are better. And a lot of it is they're just born different. Some people are born stronger, some people are born weaker. Like we see guys like this all the time. If you play any organized sports, there's always this one guy that tries to show up for the football team or for the baseball team that is he's just not a great athlete. Doesn't have great feet, maybe not great genetic structure. They require a lot more artificial stimulation to try to get their bodies at a level to perform to meet the standards of the rest of the team. Yeah. Right? Or they get cut. And it's artificial selection, and it's if it's there instead, and this has been going on since the Stone Age. Instead of getting cut from a baseball team, they would have got picked off by a predator. It just happens, So, but right now, human beings, we're the only species that can artificially produce our stimulation instead of the environment doing it for us. Mm-hmm. So that's what training is. And some guys, they don't need to train as much to be as good. They just come out of the box better, and it just is what it is. And BJ's one of those guys. He just came out of the box better, and you can see. BJ, he's naturally really relaxed. He's got a lot of foot speed. He's got great coordination. He's got great timing and balance. And BJ is known for this legendary run to get his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Have you heard of this before?
No.
So the myth is that BJ got his black belt in just 3 years of Jiu-Jitsu, from start to finish.
And this is the legit like. Jiu-Jitsu guys respect his black belt after 3 years.
Yeah. Beating black belts after 3 years. And he ran the jiu-jitsu scene in California and Hawaii, like during like the early 2000s before he was an MMA fighter. Like, they call him the Prodigy. Like he has the nickname the Prodigy for a reason, because everyone thought like, dude, this is the Hawaiian Jesus of MMA. He's gonna be world champion one day. Now, granted, his obsession with learning was really high. He said he was obsessed with jiu-jitsu. That's all he wanted to do, learn jiu-jitsu every day, twice a day. He just wouldn't stop. So there is the compound effect. Like, if you put in more work than the other guy, you're going to get to that result a lot faster. But there's also the attrition rate. A lot of guys, maybe if they're weaker, they're more out of shape, they're not as neuromuscularly dominant, they're going to acquire things that might slow their journey down. Injuries, fatigue, burnout. But if you have a really advanced nervous system, where usually what takes like maybe your average jiu-jitsu athlete, maybe 1,000 reps to master a new armbar series. If you have a really advanced nervous system, if you're quote unquote really talented, that time can be cut in half. You can learn it in maybe like a couple hundred reps, and you just got it. You see these guys all the time. Like, you see them in jiu-jitsu gyms or in kickboxing gyms, or just in like, or Jake, just in like on like in baseball. You played a lot of baseball in high school, correct?
Yeah, that's my sport.
Yeah, weren't these guys that you grew up with, and they were just always better. They were just
Yeah.
always better than everyone.
Yep. Yep. I think there's the whole like Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours to become a master or something. I think about that, but you got to keep in mind like some people are just like they're able to transfer their skills from other domains so fast that they're gonna come into a new like BJ Penn when he started his jiu-jitsu journey, he probably already had like thousands of relevant hours of whatever he was into, you know, what other martial arts, but also probably sports growing up, like thousands of hours of building body awareness and chasing curiosities on how his body works, how it moves, how to manipulate other people's bodies. So people like that. There's this. I know I brought him up in another conversation. Josh Waitskin. He's a learning specialist, but he has this concept of low rep learning, and he trained jiu-jitsu with Marcelo Garcia. He said Marcelo is the lowest rep learner he ever trained with, where 1 or 2 reps and his body would know that drill forever. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I always thought that was really cool. Like these guys, it's like in class when you're studying in school. There's always the some of the kids are gonna study their ass off just for an A-, and then other people are gonna show up 2 minutes late. They didn't even remember that there was a test to study for that day, and they get 100% plus the 2 extra credit points. You know, it's just not fair. But it is kind of fair because those people have probably also spent hours studying similar stuff where they've got the neural network in their brain that they can apply to that subject. So
Well, yeah. Well, let me break that idea down
yeah,
because that's a really good way to create a good context to this. Where the 10,000 hour rule, I don't think is entirely accurate. I think that's more accurate for say like a cognitive skill. But when it comes to a kinesthetic skill, there's time and time again, there's a lot of people that just break that 10,000 hour to mastery. They just shatter it to pieces, like, and they get that mastery done in half the time.
yeah, I would argue that it's not half the time. It's just they're transferring hours that they've already trained similar things. Like for me, like once I started Muay Thai, like I'd already invested so many hours in like rotating for baseball that I had at least some of those 10,000 hours already in the bank, you know. And so for that's kind of how I was thinking of it.
Okay, so yeah, and so there. I think there's like 9 forms of intelligence, right? There's mathematical intelligence, linguistic, understanding like language. There's kinesthetic. I can't remember all of them, but there's creativity, like how artistically talented you are. Like there's some guys who are just great at art with never practicing.
Mm-hmm.
There's also kinesthetic intelligence, kinesthetic awareness. There's some guys who just have like this advanced physical IQ, where maybe they can't figure out how to learn Spanish. Like, they're just terrible at it. But when it comes to understanding like a movement, they can just get it, no problem. I remember Matt Hughes saying that he said he was like this for grappling. He's like, because he's wrestled his whole life, he's had so much experience with grappling. When he got into jiu-jitsu, he would only have to see a move once and he has it, like no problem. Like he's like, okay, arm bar switch over, and then he'd do. He's like, okay, I got it, and he'd go win a UFC fight with it in the next month.
Yeah.
And that kind of talks about like your example with Muay Thai from baseball, rotational strength in the Muay Thai, where you have this frame of reference
Mm-hmm.
of all this like different kinesthetic awareness, this neuroplasticity on movements, and you can apply that to other things. And that's why, but that's where talent is starting to come from, is how your body can reference different movements and apply it. And I remember there's this one kid who played football at my high school. He was like really good football player. Give him a shout out, Marty Rehoviak. Now Marty, don't mean to put this guy on blast. Marty was so strong and fucking fast. This kid, he was like a sophomore playing on varsity, returning punts. He's running like a 4.7. He was like lightning. And he was also a bigger kid. He was way bigger than all of us. Like sophomore year, he was like a senior, in high school. Like he had like the biceps, and we're still like barely getting through our puberty cycle, right? And he already has like facial hair. And he never hit the weight room. He never liked to work out. He never liked to run drills. He was like, quote unquote, like a relatively lazy athlete. But he would just show up and just destroy. He would just destroy. He would pull off crazy movements. He would just show up to track and field, get a starting spot on the 4x1, no problem. He just join lacrosse and start because he was such a good athlete. His nervous system was so dominant. that he didn't need to do all this extra training to get him to this level. But with those guys, it's a gift and it's a curse. And there's a phrase, that attaches to that. Like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that's an archetype that we've known since the dawn of time. Like, you've experienced it, I've experienced it. There's guys who are just so good out the box that they kind of become lazy because they don't go through the natural progression of defeat, getting better. A lot of the times it takes a really bad loss for you to never want to feel that pain again, so you double down and work your ass off to try to stack the odds in your favor. But if you're not used to losing, maybe you never really lose at all. You never go through that growth as an individual, and you kind of start to rely on your physical talents. Like Roy Jones Jr. is a picture perfect example of someone who never did shit but showed up and just dominated. His neuromuscular dominance was just insane, but never really trained. He would play basketball like on days before his fights and not really hit mitts and show up and just like put on a clinic.
Yeah.
Right. But you got guys who do take it on. And this is where we're kind of getting to BJ Penn. You do have sometimes these talented athletes do wake the fuck up, usually from a devastating loss. And there was a loss BJ received to get his ass into shape again. Like Floyd Mayweather's a good example of high neuromuscular dominance and work ethic. And when those guys combine the two, they become unstoppable. They become legends. But they don't always like to keep it up. And if we look at this fight, if we kind of segue this into BJ, you can obviously see how BJ's performing. Like, look at his balance, look at his movement, his ability to throw the jab, his relaxation. If you look at Sean Shirk, you can kind of see a difference between someone who's done a lot of like weightlifting, a lot of high tension training, a lot of circuit training, pushing himself. And you got someone like BJ Penn, not a lot of training, really high neuromuscular dominance. And the guy who's working harder is just getting outclassed by a more efficient mover. Yeah. That's really the key element when it comes to becoming like a better athlete, is movement quality, force generation, not necessarily just strength and power. And Sean Shirk was a strength and power guy. He had crazy training camps. But Sean Shirk, he never really lived up to his potential because his body started to break down right into his prime years. Shoulders were shot, lower back was shot, training capacity fell apart, and he just burned himself out and he retired without ever really seeing what he was capable of, because sometimes, your body can only take so much. And and kind of going further into BJ Penn's journey, is that, BJ Penn, he defeated Sean Shirk. He won the belt. And I believe after BJ Penn won the lightweight title, he wanted to be a double champ. He wanted to go up to welterweight and face Matt Hughes to beat Matt Hughes again for the welterweight title. And but Dana White would not give BJ Penn the title shot right off the bat. He said, like, listen, George St. Pierre has been in the contender mix forever. He's beating everyone. He's the next in line for the welterweight title. And George deserves this title shot because that's his division. You're coming up from a division asking for a title shot. So Dana White said, listen, we'll do this. You fight George St. Pierre. Whoever wins gets a title shot at Matt Hughes. Right? So BJ Penn goes up a weight class to fight George St. Pierre, and BJ Penn freaking gets destroyed. He just gets pummeled. And because now BJ Penn was facing another athlete with high neuromuscular dominance, not quite as good as BJ. I would say George is a great athlete, but naturally talented. BJ's on another level. BJ just has better reflexive control, better elastic quality. Just a better nervous system, in my opinion. But George also has smarter training methods. George never grounded himself down to powder. He had better striking protocol, better weightlifting protocol, better cardio overall, and better strategy. I believe when George St. Pierre and Firas Zahabi, when they were working together, they were unstoppable at TriStar. When BJ was working with Tom Perillo in Hawaii or at RVCA, they were doing really good stuff, but I don't think Tom Perillo is quite the strategist as a Firas Zahabi. I think Firas Zahabi, he's kind of a wizard, right now when it comes to fight IQ. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's one of the top guys. This
Yeah, easily, easily.
this kind of reminds me of a fight that just happened, the Sean O'Malley Merab fight. It was the last pay per view, but Merab is kind of the Sean Shirk or the Georges St. Pierre. He's the more athletic, the more explosive, and he just grinded Sean O'Malley down. But I'm a Sean O'Malley fan. I'm kind of hoping that this is his version of BJ Penn getting beat up by GSP, where he has to reassess and come up with some new ways to go about it in the cage. Since Sean is like BJ Penn, he's just so athletic, so smooth, so precise, so relaxed in there. But I think the kryptonite for that is those cardio machines. Just the they just don't stop. They just don't get tired.
Well, Sean also, the thing is with Sean O'Malley, and Sean gets a ton of hate, which I don't think is necessarily like fair. A lot of people think Sean O'Malley's like a UFC plant, like he's engineered to be the next Conor McGregor because the UFC is desperate for a superstar. I don't necessarily think that's exactly the case. Maybe Sean O'Malley has had some competition that's not quite up to par, but he's also faced really dangerous guys. You know, you can't. I'm not a fan of saying that guys are getting fed easy fights because you're in the UFC. Like everyone's super fucking dangerous. You know, like that's super disrespectful and doesn't really line up with reality of who these guys are.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really think there's easy fights in the UFC. Like everyone is super dangerous unless you're like in the Contender Series. Then maybe, yeah, if you're going to have like a world title holder like Sean O'Malley against a UFC contender with 2 fights, yeah, that's a huge mismatch.
Yeah,
but
I'd say any 2 fighters in the UFC in the same weight class are going to be much more similar than a UFC fighter versus a non-UFC fighter. Like even the champ versus the newbie who just got off the Contender Series. Like there's not that big of a gap. That these guys are all pretty elite.
Yeah, well, they're all pretty elite, but I guess my point was to say like Sean O'Malley is another example of a guy with high neuromuscular dominance. You know, like it's very rare to have that kind of knockout power at his weight class. He's got good biomechanics. He's got really big hands, Sean O'Malley. I don't know if you ever looked at the size of his hands. His joints, he's a lot like Max Holloway. Mm-hmm. Very lean, but his joints are really thick. His knees are really thick. His wrists, his hands, his feet are really big. Those kind of guys can generate a lot of power, and it's because they have a lot of weight in their bones. Their skeletal system is very dense. You know, that creates a little extra mass. It ups the force of their striking just enough to create those knockout capabilities. Yeah. But back to BJ, and you can see, like, as we're watching this fight, now you see how BJ, I really want you to look at BJ's footwork. I want you to look at his movement. Now, BJ right now, everyone's getting tired. You know, BJ's tired, Sean Shirk is tired, but BJ is fighting a smarter fight. And you can see how Sean Shirk, you see how his punches, like he really has to, oh, this is really bad. Where he just knees him into the wall, but go back like 60 seconds if we can. Just so we can kind of display some striking of the two. We can see like the 2 different muscle actions. Now, if you look at BJ's striking, he's very loose. He's very snappy. He really extends through his punch. His hands are relaxed. You know, he just has good timing, has good accuracy. And if you look at Sean Shirk's striking, he doesn't land. Like he really muscles his punch, and he tries to jump in and use his whole body into the punch. That destroys your force output, especially if you have really tight muscle systems. Your fascia is super restricted from years of weight training. It really degrades the accuracy and precision of your striking by inches. You know, maybe a half inch, a quarter inch, but that's a lot in a fight, you know, being off by that much. Unlike BJ, does less training, a better nervous system, and he's just popping it with jabs. His strikes are landing. He's staying loose. He's staying fluid. You know, he's doing damage. While Sean Shirk, he just looks like he's just trying to muscle every punch. Accuracy is breaking down. You know, all that cardio and all that training doesn't always equate to better fighting. And this is what I'm always preaching this to guys. Like, listen, more muscle doesn't mean you're going to be a better striker. Like, stop focusing on becoming a better workout guy and focus on being a better martial artist. Yeah. You know, you saw that punching series, nothing. He's hitting hands. Then you see BJ, he's tagging him. He can improvise movements, flying knees, speed, elasticity. It's just a clear example of how an advanced nervous system compared to a guy who has an overtrained nervous system trained in all the wrong directions They can't put out, they don't move the same. They don't fight the same. They don't do the same kind of damage.
Yeah. It's the nervous system is it's a quality thing, you know. Then
Yes.
that can you can like a guy with an advanced nervous system like BJ Penn can out leverage their quality over someone else's volume or quantity training.
Yeah. Yeah. And the neuromuscular reflexes,
Yeah.
your reaction time, all these soft qualities that we can't really measure, they're everything in a fight.
Hmm.
You know, you have a guy who's nothing but power and strength, and he can't do anything against a guy who's all reflex and timing.
Yeah. I
You know, and
remember
a lot of guys lose sight of this.
I remember hearing an interview with GSP about the I guess the next fight that he had with BJ Penn, but in preparing for that, they were breaking down film on a frame by frame basis, and apparently at the time, BJ Penn had the fastest reactions, like in terms of frame how many frames to react of anyone in the UFC that they were tracking that way, whoever GSP was working with.
Yeah, 100%. And when you look at BJ, he's a little slower. You know, you see his footwork is a little slower. He's a little heavier. He doesn't move quite as athletically. Now, granted, this is probably the setup for this fight, but BJ, he's not good at preparing his body. He's lazy, to be totally honest. He gets lazy. He really banks on his talent of his nervous system to get him through the fight and to figure it out. All right, so let's go into BJ Penn going through the nervous system training, and we'll kind of reflect on his performances after. So BJ eventually lost to George St. Pierre a few fights later, or maybe the next fight. He wanted to rectify his wrongdoings. Like, BJ got his ass kicked so bad by George that they threw in the towel. Like, his BJ was just not responding to his corner. He was just totally fried. Cardio was fried. He was getting beat up. George was just better prepared, better game plan, just better fighter on that day. And so BJ Penn got a hold of, no, actually, I think it's BJ Penn's brother got a hold of the Marinoviches. They didn't really explain why. BJ was trying to explain. He couldn't really remember. But they both lived in the California area. And BJ started doing training camps with the Marinoviches. The first training camp they did in California against Kenny Florian. And this is where BJ kind of took on the nervous system training and realized that, oh, this training system kind of fits what I like to feel when I fight. You know, like when you have a guy who's really neuromuscularly talented, you know, like their nervous system is really advanced, their reflexes are really advanced, they're fast twitch, their timing. When you do a more traditional weightlifting system, a lot of these guys can feel it working against them. Mm-hmm. Now, in a lot of situations, they're either on a football team, they're in a college sport or something like that, and they have to go through these workouts. It's mandatory. And a lot of them skip out on them. You know, a lot of them complain, you know, they don't like to do it. Like, I worked with a football player, really fast fucking guy, jumps really high. He's trying to get a job in the NFL. He hated weightlifting. He always felt like told me he'd always feel like shit whenever he would have to go weightlift the next day at practice. He felt slower. He felt tight. He felt sore. He just didn't feel good on the field, you know. And Marv also discovered this as a talent scout for the NFL. He would go all across the nation, and he would screen the best contenders that could be drafted in the NFL during, like, I think the 70s. And he realized after collecting all this data that the guys who had the best numbers in the weight room had the worst numbers on the field.
Interesting. It's a negative correlation.
Yeah. And then he also came across other patterns. You know, certain ranges of motion, certain reflexes, certain muscle developments, where he noticed that there's common biomechanical traits to the best guys. Or he noticed that guys with great biomechanics, good reflexive timing, all these different qualities he was trying to measure. And this is the 70s, before a lot of these ideas were even like mainstream. He was kind of writing the book to what the combine is kind of based off of. He was writing the book for the NFL. You know, he kind of pioneered the whole methodology and the whole philosophy for assessing athletes. He was the first to really do it at a large scale, funded by the NFL. And so he realized all these different common patterns, And that's when he started to understand what real athleticism was and how it really came from the nervous system. And that's when he quit the NFL to run his own training methodology to try to figure out, how do I make an athlete better? And then Marv Marinovich, over time, put together his training methodology. He started working with Dr. Edith Hughes on the ball work and balance training. And that's where we got the nervous system training. And that's what BJ Penn is running through right now. Now, when BJ was running through this training camp, there was a lot of different things that Marv Marinovich was doing to try to fix what's going on with BJ. First thing is athletic assessment. Running an athletic assessment on BJ Penn's body, understanding where his strengths and weaknesses are. And this athletic assessment is something that was taught to me by Nick Curson. Nick Curson learned it from Marv Marinovich, and it's just manual muscle testing. How strong is their lab adduction? How strong is their lab abduction? How strong is their internal rotation, external rotation? How strong is their core strength? And there's all these different tests that we can run to determine where they have weakness in their kinetic chain. Wherever you have weakness, you're leaking force. Your force generation is going down, compensation goes up, and injuries start to occur. So you first run him through BJ through the athletic assessment, figure out where his strengths and weaknesses are, figure out how fast the muscle can fire, how much neurological drive the muscle has, how much strength the muscle has. And then once you determine this, then we have to figure out what's going on with his cardio system. And so what a lot of guys don't do, and it blows my mind, how many MMA coaches do not do this, with the best fighters in the world still don't do this. Get a fucking heart rate monitor on your athletes. Like, this is the easiest thing to do, and I never see it. Only with the top guys in the world that hire an advanced specialist do I see heart rate monitors. But majority of MMA fighters never cardio test themselves. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. These guys don't have these numbers. Yeah. So you put a heart rate monitor on you. You can run yourself through various cardio tests. You can do the Cooper's 12-minute run test. Super easy. Run your numbers in a calculator, figure out where your VO2 max is, start calculating your zones, and you can see if there's a deficiency. You can do the 10-minute row test, where you get on a row machine, put it either to resistance 1 or resistance 2, and you row your ass off for 10 minutes to see how many calories you can burn. Depending on how many calories you can burn, in the athletic assessment, it gives you a score. And you can also determine where a kinetic breakdown happens, and also where your mental stamina is at. Here's a very interesting thing. When I run guys through the cardio, the Concept 2, when I was training people in person, I was training fighters, the Concept 2 row machine test, this would make or break the training program. I had guys literally quit on me and walk out of the building because mentally they couldn't handle it. They would get upset. They would start freaking out. They would get frustrated. They wouldn't and they wouldn't want to be pushed. You really figure out where your limits are in cardio training, where your mental strength is, where your determination is, your mental stamina. Like, I literally had on 2 different occasions, I had a male MMA fighter, literally like halfway into the test, he quit. He's like, "Oh man, I'm not feeling it today. Let's just do this tomorrow." And I'm like, "No, we're doing it today. We need a score today. Like, you're finishing the test." And he's like, "You can't tell me what to do." I'm like, "You hired me to help you. Like, you hired me. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, you think it's hard now? This is a fucking row machine. How are you going to feel when you're fighting another man?" And he's like, "You know what? I'm not going to be talked to like this." I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're a fucking adult. Like, do the test. You're he's a pro." And he packed his bags. He walked out the building. Never saw him again. Never saw him from a fucking row machine test.
Do you know how his fighting results went after that? Did you keep?
Never fought again. It broke him. He never fought again. He totally disappeared. Wow. I want to name his name so bad because this guy annoyed me so much. And but
what's the first letter of his name, just so that he knows?
Jay.
Jay. Okay.
Yeah, you know who you are, Jay. You know who you are. You fucking quit. And you never fought again. Super talented, and he was super talented. It's another area. He was so physically gifted that he just couldn't handle the push. Emotionally, he wasn't strong. And this is why a lot of guys quit. This is why a lot of guys fall apart in sports, is because mentally they're just not strong enough to handle it. But he totally fell apart, because when you push yourself to your absolute limit and then beyond, and then you have to stay there, you really figure out what's going on with their personality. Are they going to quit? Are they going to argue? Are they going to get upset? Are they going to get more determined? Are they going to get more aggressive? And you want to see these things. And when you see it in the test, this is why the whole David Goggins thing is, I think, is a bunch of bullshit. You know, not to say David Goggins is full of shit. I think he's a great guy. He's definitely hardworking. And can you test your mind and come out better the other side? Yes. But at the expense of your whole body, not necessary. You can figure this out in 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, with a heart rate monitor, a coach oversighting you, running the test at max effort, you will figure out what you're made out of. Because you don't need that much time to burn the nervous system out. It only takes about 10 minutes, maybe 20 on a really advanced athlete. And in another area where this row machine broke an athlete that quit on me. I was working with this female fighter, and she started arguing with me. And like there was another, like, because there was two fighters. One had to go, and then the other one went. We were taking turns because we had one row machine. And we were trying to give her encouragement. Be like, hey, keep going, don't give up, keep pushing. We're almost there. And she's like, everyone, shut the fuck up. Stop talking to me. Let me do this. And I'm like, listen. I was like, I stopped the test. I'm like, first off, don't ever talk to me this way. It is my job to push you. Like, don't tell me to shut the fuck up. Don't try to control the situation. Like, I am guiding you through this, and I need you to push all the way through. And then she started arguing. She's like, yeah, but I don't like when people are talking in my ear. It fucking annoys me. And to me, that was it. I was like, you know what? You have a serious ego issue. You are not coachable. Like, we're not going to work together. If you're going to get mad and snappy because you're tired on a row machine test, like, this is a huge character flaw. Like, you're not going to push yourself. You're not going to, like, we're done. And I was done after that. We never worked with her again. Told her to leave. And shit happens.
I always bring it up, and so I sound like a broken record for anyone who's watched a few of these episodes now, but the tie between the emotional drive, as we've called it, but just sort of like the emotional vigor and the results is huge. And I feel like the nervous system training weeds that out.
Yeah, but the cardio testing, you figure out who actually wants to be a professional and who just wants to have a fight. Yeah. And a lot of fighters, so I've worked with some fighters that were great. They bust their ass, and it's usually college wrestlers that transition MMA are phenomenal to work with. Like, they get it. They've been through the system. They know how to shut the fuck up and work hard and get the job done. Usually the guys that come off the street, that are really into like fighting, they're street fighters they usually have a lot of emotional issues. They fall apart. They fall apart the moment it gets really hard. They just want to have a fight and feel like a badass. There's a lot of that. Yeah. But getting through this, let's get back on topic. Kind of went through a little bit of a rant with my previous training experience. It gets really annoying. But with BJ, they ran him through the cardio training, and they also put a heart rate monitor on him, and they had him go through rounds of sparring. What is his heart rate doing through grappling? What is his heart rate doing through mitt work? And when they do that, they can figure out which areas of the fight are taxing him the most. And once you figure that out, that's when you realize, okay, these are the areas we have to double down on. There's another part of the nervous system training protocol that's really hard on athletes. Is a lot of athletes will veer away from their weaknesses and really double down on their strengths. That will eventually cost you. Especially as a pro, that will cost you a huge paycheck sooner or later. And so when you figure out where things are going wrong, now you know how to organize his cardio training and his training protocol based on a proper assessment. You have a real blueprint you can work with. Most gyms, even the best gyms in the world, like when I see footage at AKA, when I see footage at American Top Team, they're just running random circuits, doing random cardio training, random strength and conditioning, no data, no assessments, no direction. They're just throwing shit at the wall hoping it sticks. And these are world-class gyms. World-fucking-class gyms. And they're just running it freaking Bush League style. Yeah. So this is the reason why the guys who go through the nervous system training system and really go through it, like Rafael dos Anjos, Dominic Cruz, BJ Penn, uh, I don't really exactly count George St. Pierre because he kind of leaned off. He did it just for his physical therapy. But these three examples, these guys that really ran through the system, they dominated. Their performances were through the roof in a relatively short amount of time. And this is why I'm such a proponent for this training system. I have never seen a training system take a guy, especially someone like Rafael dos Anjos, take him from being an average to, above average fighter to world champion in a year.
Yeah.
Complete transformation in a matter of months. Complete transformation. BJ Penn, in a 3-month camp, he was a totally new fighter. Faster, more explosive. He wasn't getting tired in rounds. He finished Kenny Florian, he finished Diego Sanchez. And it's not like these guys were out of shape. Kenny Florian was a super dangerous fighter. Diego Sanchez, like, no one breaks Diego. Like, he is unbreakable. You have to shut his brain down to stop him. And BJ freaking tore them to pieces. And the moment BJ Penn stopped working with Mark Marinovich, immediately reverted back to his old performances, started losing again. I've never seen a training system elevate a guy in such a short amount of time this quickly with such a significant result. I've never come across, and still haven't come across it. And I've been looking at training systems for like over 10 years. This guy is doing this training system with this coach, in Florida. He's doing this sort of like things with, I don't want to name training systems, I don't want to bash people. But you see all these different fighters, Dustin Poirier doing it with, a particular coach. Oliveira doing it with this coach, not seeing these kind of improvements, just not coming across it. Maybe marginal improvements, but nothing drastic, nothing career changing.
Yeah.
And this is what, and I saw this transformation. I was a big BJ Penn fan, and I'd watch BJ. I was a fan before he started doing this training, and then when he was doing the training, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I was like, what? I was totally blown away. This is some crazy shit. And then after he did this training, I'm like, holy shit. Like, I've never seen anything like this. And then I saw it again with RDA. RDA was cool. I'd watched some of his fights, started working with this guy named Nick Curson. And I was like, holy shit, there's that fucking crazy ass training system again. And then RDA, came back, fought Nate Diaz, blew him out of the water. Fought Donald Cerrone, blew him out of the water. Fought Anthony Pettis, completely destroyed him, won the title. And I was like, dude, this is it. Like, this is it. There is secret sauce out there. And it's this fucking nervous system training. That's why I can't shut up about it. Because so people have no idea how fucking effective this is and how quickly it changes your life. Everyone is still doing these old school methods from like 50 years ago. Nothing is getting updated. And I'm just sorry. It's like saying the sky is falling and no one wants to listen.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I can attest. And going back to what you were saying earlier, like, it's like I've always hated lifting weights, just because it's like not mentally stimulating. The nervous system training is, what's different is that it's like fun. It's there's reactions.
Very engaging.
Yeah, exactly. There's feedback and response constantly throughout every single drill, every single movement. I think that's...
And you can feel it. When you start doing it, you can feel like, okay, yeah, I feel like I'm doing athletic shit.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this is appropriate for what my goal is.
Yeah. You wake up the next day, you feel a little better, rather than like stiff and having to overcome the previous day's workout. It's like, oh, I'm a little step ahead of where I was yesterday.
Yeah. You can literally feel 1% better every time.
Yeah.
Like, every time you can feel 1% better. I haven't felt that with anything, and I've done so many fucking different systems, and I still work with different systems to see if there's better shit out there. I'm not coming across it.
It's kind of like if you're really stiff and you get a either a good mobility session, or if you go get a massage, like, you feel different. You feel like your body functions differently. It's kind of like that, but you can do it to yourself any day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah, 100. Well, that's a lot of that is the fascial rehydration you're feeling from the ball we're training.
Interesting.
Yeah, like ballistic plyometric stimulus onto the muscle puts fluid back in the fascia, and that's what That's why after the ball work, you ever feel like, oh my God, like I can fucking throw an 80-mile-per-hour fastball now.
Yeah.
Like you feel ready.
Yeah.
So so BJ, he's doing this training system. He's doing ball work training methodology. Like he's gone through his cardio training or his cardio assessment, his athletic assessment. Now it's time to do the work. And there's various different drills that the Marinoviches have accumulated over the years. There's speed and agility training. Well, Marinovich kind of invented speed and agility training. Not a lot of people know that. But Marv Marinovich, like the cone drills, the figure eight drills, the shuttle run, a lot of that shit, Marv developed the concepts for all of that. Like BJ Penn has a famous story where they were like using like the field at UCLA because Marv, I guess he's like an alum or something like that. He get like he's allowed to use their facility. Like, hey Marv, anytime, fucking get over here. They love him. And this one college coach, this female, was kind of like assisting, with the training. BJ was explaining on the podcast. And she was having him do like this cone drill, and he's like, "Oh, that's too slow. Like it's not being done right." She's like, "Well, how do you know?" He's like, "Because I made it up. Like I invented this shit. Like like the 40-yard dash and all these concepts that are staples in sports. Like I wrote the book on this philosophy. Like I started this. So Marv and Gary have like over 80 years of sports performance training from the start. Like they were studying Soviet manuals and working with Dr. Yessis during the Cold War to learn this. Like, in my opinion, no one really understands athletic training at a higher level than Marv and Gary Marinovich when they're working together. Like, no one even comes close. Because everyone tries to mix in the fucking fitness system with performance. And Marv never did that. He never thought it was necessary. He always was thinking performance. How to stimulate the body, how to create these joint angles, how to produce more force. And the other philosophy is it's like, oh, this worked really good in fitness, let's make it work for sports performance. It's like, no, like it's not necessary. Focus on how we stimulate the body, not the tools that we're going to use. Like we don't need barbells. We can use something different to get a better result out of it. And so as you're seeing BJ Penn, he's going through this camp where they start reprogramming how he trains. And Marv measured out so many different, like he was very data-based. And he had pool training, he had speed and agility training, he had plyometric training. He was doing the ball work training methodology to make his muscles and tendons and fascia fire off kinetic energy a lot faster. And you also got to fix areas. Like if they have weakness in the feet, you got to fix their feet. You got to repair their hips. You got to repair their back. You got to start getting rid of these weak points so the athlete can start working more efficiently as a solid unit instead of training things in all fragmented sections like the older system does. And then BJ started getting better and better and better. And then, BJ till this day, Gary Marinovich still does this training at his gym in Hawaii. They still have ball work training. They still have supercats over there. Like BJ never abandoned it. And so then BJ goes through this camp, and you can see as BJ starts getting into his other fights, you'll see a physical difference in BJ. Like his back muscles, his strength composition, his core development, his glute development, his feet, his calves, everything. It wasn't looking bigger. It was looking more defined. It was looking more athletic. It was looking, the secondaries and the primaries are now working together. They're more balanced. And that's when BJ's performances just started going through the roof. So I think somewhere in here we can find maybe probably just search it. I think it'd be easier to search. You put BJ Penn versus Kenny Florian.
All right, so here's that BJ Penn fight with Kenny Florian.
Yeah, so when you watch this fight, Jake, what I want you to do is I want you to look at the way BJ Penn, how he looks physically, and then when the fight starts, I want you to look at how he moved compared to the Sean Shirk fight. And you'll see a very clear difference of BJ's movement. He's more reflexive. He has more height. He has more energy. See, that's emotional drive. You see how he's like kind of bouncing. He wants to get in there. His body's twitching.
Yeah, you can even just see his definition, his muscle definition. It's a little more than it was.
Yeah, he's got better muscle definition. You can see his reflexes starting to fire off. He's fired up. Like this is what cardio confidence does for you. When you have good training, your nervous system has a lot of accumulated data built into the fascia and the spine that you have good evidence that you're going to pull this off. your body is ready to go. Like you feel like you can't wait to fucking get your hands on this guy. You know, if you're not feeling that, you had a shitty training camp. Like this, and this isn't a mental thing, it's a physical thing. You don't need to mentally hype yourself up. Your nervous system will do it for you because your fight or flight response isn't a thought process, it's autonomous. And now when BJ, his training is so good, his reflexes, his progression, his cardio development, the evidence, they show him that his numbers are great. You know, like look how much more active he is in the fight. Look how much more twitchy his hands are, his footwork, you know, his sharpness, his aggression. Like, and he just like, and Kenny Florian's a super fucking dangerous guy. Like Kenny Florian, he was no slouch, never won the title. You know, he's a UFC winner, Ultimate Fighter winner, Ultimate Fighter 1. And, you know, BJ, he's just on another level, just super prepared.
You can just see his feints. His feints, there's way more of them and they're way sharper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see that. Like, I haven't seen, I've only, actually, I'll take that back. There's one training camp where I saw a fighter come through looking pretty sharp like this, and that was when Brandon Moreno fought. Remember we were going over those fights? Brandon Moreno fought during COVID. He looked like shit, very weak, very undertrained. And then Brandon Moreno came back to fight that white guy. I can't remember his name. He had a kind of a weird name.
Kai Kara France, I think.
Yeah. Brandon Moreno looked way more reflexive, way more developed, a lot sharper. Like that was a good before and after, and you don't see those very often, which is crazy because in my opinion, you should look better every fight. Like if you're in the UFC, you're fighting competition, every time you return to the cage, you should be a better version. If you're not a better version, you need to fire your coaching staff or you need to quit. Yeah. Because you are not doing yourself any due diligence. You're not doing due diligence for the fans or your own mental and physical health. You got to be like sharp and on point every single time. And when you're not, when you can see that, when you see guys go up and down in camps, sometimes they show it looking great. Sometimes they're hit or miss. They'll never have a great legacy. You know, they'll never be title holders. Like Donald Cerrone is a really good example of that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes he shows up, sometimes he doesn't, and that's all because of training camp. It's not mental, it's physical. Because your physical capabilities, your physical preparation, creates the mental architecture for how you're emotionally going to enter the fight, how your aggression is going to be, how your timing, how your flow state. Yeah. It's all physically connected. And a lot of guys think it's mental, so they need to hire David Goggins to go on really hard runs to throw up, to feel like they accomplished something. When in reality, they just need to revamp their training system. They need to get some real data and numbers on what's going on with their body, so they're not guessing, so they're not grasping at superstitions. Yeah. So they're not wearing fucking weird outfits at press conferences, you know, hoping that this is going to sell enough tickets because my training camp sucks. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's...
Your subconscious will know it. If you're actually prepared for like the specific demands of a fight, whatever it is, whatever your sport is, your subconscious will know going in. Like you can, your ego can tell you that you're ready. Your ego can tell you that you're not ready, but subconsciously your body knows when it's ready and not.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And that's what you see. Like, that's why guys who do a lot of grandiosity, a lot of pizzazz and shit like that, a lot of it, I think, is like compensation for a lack of training quality. I think it's part of with Sean O'Malley. You know, Sean O'Malley, he has a little bit of a performance issue. He kind of fades. Yeah. You know, he's got the Conor McGregor issue. Mm-hmm. You know, now Sean O'Malley, I think he's like relatively a nice guy. You know, he's not a dickhead. He's not punching old men at a bar or knocking. Conor McGregor just knocked some guy out of the club. Like, just knocked his ass out. It's like, Jesus Christ, man, have some freaking character. Like, God.
Yeah, Conor he's on a spin. He's been spinning for years now.
Conor, he's done. He's gone. Yeah. He might as well be dead.
Yeah. He might, unless he becomes president of Ireland or something.
Yeah, he starts a new cocaine bill for Ireland. Yeah. But yeah, so are you seeing, like, look at this?
Yeah.
Like the speed, like when do you see it? When Jake, you've been watching UFC and you've been watching sports. Like, when have you seen a training camp be this effective on a guy where you can noticeably tell, like, holy shit, like something's different? Usually people say it's like, oh, this guy's probably taking steroids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I've never seen anything like it. And for anyone watching, we'd mentioned it, but we did a whole another episode breaking down Brandon Moreno. That was kind of the primary thing, and that was very similar. You could just see he got so much sharper as soon as his training got more advanced. The sharpness,
Hmm.
that's what changed the most.
Yeah, man. And you need it. And the hard part is maintaining these training camps.
Yeah,
A lot of guys they go through burnout. It's a hard life being a fighter. It's not easy. And the more you fight, the higher it gets, the more destabilizing it is for them mentally. Because now there's more at stake, there's more criticism, there's more spotlight, there's more money. There's more you have more popularity. You also have more haters. And you're also fighting guys who are better every time.
yeah,
That's like a ton of psychological energy that puts a toll on you. And a lot of these guys develop these insane egos just to cope with the pressure of being in this position, and also coping with the fact that this is going to be temporary. Every fighter in the back of their mind knows this is not going to last. I will fail sooner or later. It's like waiting for the Grim Reaper. He will come for me one day. There's no way out of this.
yeah.
And that's a hard pill to swallow. It's a really tough pill to swallow for these guys because they want to feel invincible forever. Their ego demands it, but they also understand reality and it's not possible. All right, so let's also let's check out the Diego Sanchez fight. Let's go to the next clip that I showed you, and it shows up at 20. Let me double check for you to save time for the audience. At 21 minutes and 19 seconds. You want to see a fucking ass kicking. You want to see someone love Diego. I always feel bad when I describe this fight because I think Diego's a great guy. And he's called me a couple times to talk about this fight, in the nervous system training. But this is the biggest beating I've ever seen in MMA history, and I've never seen it matched. And Diego was on some shit. Not drugs. Who knows? I don't think so. I think Diego was on some, some positive affirmation shit at the time. He was working with Steve Maxwell, the kettlebell master. Diego was all kettlebells and functional strength. Remember when functional strength and CrossFit and shit was super popular?
Yeah.
Like it started to get real big after like 2007, 2008, and it started taking over fitness. Diego was huge into that. He was huge into the functional training, and BJ was doing the nervous system training. And to me, this was like a test for me. We're like, okay, how good are these systems? You got a kettlebell system versus this nervous system training system. Let's put it to the test. Let's see the results. Let's do something that no other sport can do, where we can take experimental training protocols and test them in a lab in real time, and the result makes everyone money. And and BJ, from the beginning, this goes almost 5 rounds from start to finish. BJ just beats the fuck out of this poor guy. Just beats the shit out of him. Diego had no chance. He dropped him hard into the first round, and BJ never got tired. Here's another thing that another guy's got to realize: your cardio is so important for your fight. It is so important for your confidence. When you're a gas tank, and it's not about how much you can pump out, it's about how quickly you can replenish. That's the key to good cardio. Anyone can pump out energy at max. Anyone can sprint 400 meters, and we're all tired. Every human being is tired, unless you're like an Olympian, right? But can you recharge in 60 seconds and do it again, and do it again, and then do it again? That is good cardio, the replenishment, not the output. Well, the output is a part of it, but the replenishment is more important, because there's a lot of guys who are great in the first round, they can't replenish. Second round, they're falling apart. Third round, it's either they usually get finished, or it goes to decision, they lose a decision. But BJ, never known for his cardio. He dialed it in. Only took like 6 months, 2 training camps. Honestly, for a pro fighter, 8 weeks. 8 weeks you can have cardio to do a 3-round, 5-minute fight. Perfect. Starting strong in the first, ending strong in the third. If you cardio test, you stick with the protocols. You do your sprints when you need to do it. You do your 2-hour training sessions when you need to do it. You focus on hitting the numbers. And you have someone monitor your cardio training so it's done properly. You will have world-class cardio in 8 weeks. Any human being. It's not easy, though. It's going to be fucking really demanding. And most guys, this is why I believe most guys never do it to this level, because they don't have the mental strength to get through it.
They're also cutting weight while, training, and there's a lot going on.
If your cardio is falling apart because you're cutting weight, you need to go up. You need to go up in a weight division. And that's what RDA did. RDA, he went up because he knew it was working against him. And they said, listen, you're never going to keep this up. You get heavier as you get older. You got to go up. If your weight cut should be about 8 to 10 pounds of water, and even in my opinion, I think you should just cut 7 to 8 of water. But you could get away with 10. You should have no problem with your cardio, with your gas tank, and your diet leading up to that. You should be measuring out your carbohydrates properly. You have macro calculators on your phone. You can go on ChatGPT to organize your diet perfectly, down to the macronutrient, down to the calorie. You have all the tools in the world. So missing weight, not having good cardio, there's no excuse these days. And there's still guys in the UFC that fall apart, missing weight, not doing it. And to me, I would fight those guys. I would fight because that means that they have mental weakness in their training camp, and they're eventually going to fold. They're more beatable. But so let's scroll through towards the end of the fight. Let's show people what they came here to see. So you see how red Diego is compared to BJ. That's a sign that he's not able to metabolize his lactic acid efficiently. Now, granted, Diego didn't gas in this fight. He still hung in there, but he did not hang in there at the level he needs to be because his cardio wasn't engineered for this performance. That's another thing guys fuck up on. Your cardio needs to be designed for what's going to show up. Not just doing like a 3-mile run and doing some mitt work thinking that, okay, I'm ready. No, dude, the fight feels so much different than the training protocols. Your training preparation needs to be very specific to go 5-minute rounds, really hard with 60 seconds of replenishment. It needs to be engineered to withstand that under those parameters. And most people just run. They'll do random circuit training, they'll hit the bag until they're tired. No periodization process, no tracking, no nothing. And that's why so many guys don't pump out great performances in the sport. Yeah, you see how BJ just moving forward. Now you can see BJ, of course, he's fatigued. Anyone's going to get fatigued. But when you look at his fatigue when he's fighting Sean Shirk compared to how he's fighting Diego, you can see BJ is still engaged. He's still reflexive. He's still using his footwork. He's still walking him down. He's not just sitting there, waiting for an opportunity to punch. He's creating opportunities. He's being aggressive. He's being offensive. That's what good training gives you. It gives you the confidence to push the fight where you want it to be pushed because you can handle it. You're not going to get tired. You're going to be fast. Your punches can land wherever you need them to land.
Yeah, I would argue that fatigue factor is like the most anxiety-inducing part of it. Like more than getting hit, more than getting choked, it's the fear of getting tired is. I mean, I know for me that's when I start to like panic in jiu-jitsu or whatever. That's when the fatigue sets in and there's still a few minutes left in the round.
100%. Cardio, cardio makes cowards of us all. Yeah. Like when your cardio system starts to fail, your nervous system will start throwing random thoughts of doubt and fear in your mind. That's why they kind of show up. Because you run out of energy, you run out of air, you're done. You're done. There's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't matter how mentally tough you are, your nervous system will force you into retreat. It'll force you into freeze or flight, no matter what. Yeah. You are not stronger than your nervous system. Your brain is not more advanced than your nervous system. The nervous system is an old structure, like the dinosaurs were running off nervous systems. Yeah. Our monkey brain, this is a new structure. Mm-hmm. It's only a couple million years old. Nervous system is billions of years old. Yeah. Okay, so let's go a little further ahead. Have you seen this fight, Jake? Do you know how this ends?
I actually haven't. I thought I had, but now since we've been watching it, I have not seen these sequences.
Man, I got to show you the ending. It's pretty good. So you can see Diego is still trying. He's still trying to fight, But you can clearly see like Diego doesn't have the reflexes. He doesn't have the coordination. He doesn't have the soft qualities that BJ does. You know, he does like, and this is like the difference, like where there's a lot of these things like that not a lot of people really think about, like balance, improvised scrambling, you know, being able to reflexively react and improvise movements like on a dime. These movements and these soft qualities are so important for sports. They really make up everything in sports.
Yeah.
You know, there's no vertical jump. You know, in MMA, there's no broad jump that we're seeing right now. You know, and most strength and conditioning protocols are really just trying to get those numbers to improve. That's really that's really what's driving their principles, is to get these hard qualities up. But they don't show up in the goddamn sport hardly ever.
Yeah.
You know, but they need something measurable to validate themselves. This is it. So BJ throws the first head kick of his career, hits Diego in the forehead, and BJ's just beating his ass to the point where the ref eventually is going to interfere, and you're going to see why. You know, and if you look, BJ's shorts are starting to turn pink.
Yeah.
They started out white.
There's a puddle down
but his shorts are turning pink, and BJ is not bleeding. Yeah. He's still just beating his beating his ass.
Ugh, that's nasty.
This is the worst cut I've ever seen in all of combat sports. Yeah. The worst.
Was that from the head kick?
It's from the head kick. He split his forehead open, and the doctor said, "Yeah, I can see your skull. It's over." Look at BJ, still fired up. He still has energy.
He's licking the blood off his gloves.
Off the glove. Yeah, he used to do that. BJ had a weird thing. He'd lick the blood of his opponents.
Man, if you go destroy a world-class fighter, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, but yeah, and you know, BJ and Diego, they're still cool. They still talk. They were friends. They were cool before. They were cool after. You know, like, I really wish Diego all the success in the world. Like, Diego's such a fucking legend. He's such a good guy at heart. Is he crazy? Yeah. Is he a weird guy? 100%. But is he a good soul? I believe so. I believe he's a really good guy. I think he just gets mixed up with strange ideas. You know, and he can struggle with impulse control. His emotional control is not always the best, you know, and a lot of guys do struggle with emotional control after their careers, and a lot of them do get involved with drugs. Yeah. You know, alcohol is a big one, pills, amphetamines, you know, getting into street fights. So at the end of the day,
I was going to say, on that note, what are your thoughts on what's going on with BJ Penn these days? There's a lot of reports that he thinks his family is replaced by imposters and they're out to get him, and it's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not a good sign of mental health. You know, it really bums me out because I saw BJ Penn fight live. I saw him. He fought Matt Hughes at UFC 137. You know, he knocked out Matt Hughes in the first round. It was like, I'm a huge BJ Penn fan and a Diego Sanchez fan, and both of them have run into some issues after fighting. Now, what I will say is that, one, you have to get yourself help when you also have to recognize when your behavior is not appropriate, and that could be hard for a lot of them because a lot of them have such strong egos, you know, and they're used to special treatment for so long that a lot of the times they feel like they're not doing the wrong thing, they're doing the right thing. So a lot of them need, you know, you need good, honestly, you need DBT therapy. You need dialectical behavioral therapy. There's a very specific type of therapy that was designed for people with borderline personality disorder, people who have limbic system disorders where they can't control their emotions. Because any signs of addiction, erratic behavior, risky behavior, violent, aggressive behavior, or like, it's all emotion. They lack emotional control. Yeah. Their emotional control skills are very poor, so they give into their emotions, and a lot of times their emotions can manifest into impulses. So a lot of these guys need to get involved with some real systems. I think DBT therapy is a very effective system to help you learn how to regulate, control your emotions, understand what's really happening to you instead of what you feel like is happening to you. You know, that's why I always tell athletes that I work with, never say I feel like. I fucking hate that phrase. I feel like. There's nothing more detrimental to your mind and your own behavior than saying I feel like. Because feelings are not facts. Yeah. They don't line up with reality. You can feel like, look at a schizophrenic person. They feel like there's voices in their heads, but that doesn't mean there's voices in their heads. Yeah. So, but we push I feel so much in our society right now. And I think it's very destabilizing. You know, so I'll talk about one thing. We'll kind of close on this. Is that the reason I know a lot of this is because I've been through DBT therapy. Because I had really bad emotional regulation issues, really, really bad, and it was seriously affecting my life. And when I started doing DBT therapy, they told me you have to stop saying certain things. You have to change your language. You have to stop saying I feel like. You have to stop using the word but. Start using the word and. Yeah. You know, if you say like, oh man, I really want to do this, but you know, XYZ, start saying and. Because the language you use starts to control the way you think. And so if you start saying, I think this is what's happening to me, instead of saying, I feel like this is when you say, I feel like, you start to enable those emotions and you start to allow those emotions to take hold of your nervous system. Yeah. When you say, I think this is happening, you create a little bit of space to identify, is this fact or feeling? Do I have evidence to line this up with my behavior? Or am I just running on emotion, you know, for no reason? Yeah. Guys with BJ, like a lot of fighters, they need to get that kind of help. And they need to take it seriously because it's not easy. It's fucking work. You have to really put in the work. You have to write shit down. You have to do the book. You know, it's like going to school. You have to do it. But if you do it, it's totally improved my life for the better. I'm a totally different person now that I know how to control my emotional behavior. Yeah. You know?
I'm going to check it out as maybe more of a performance than a recovery outlet. I'll add on to that. There's a Florida rapper named Hot Boy, and I like the way he puts it. He put it simply. He said, "Don't tell me what it ain't, baby. Tell me what it is." But I always like that one.
Oh yeah.
And then the other one I'll say is I had a few concussions years ago. And one of my buddies who had a major concussion did memory training, which is it's structured visualization, but I did that, and I think that helped a lot as well. So I would say any type of like cognitive enhancement, you know, whether you're reading a book and like legitimately studying it or doing some of these more advanced cognition training techniques. Yeah, it's like
cognitive skills really help. Behavioral skills. Yeah. You know, and I do not believe in talk therapy. I think talk therapy can make it worse. Yeah. Especially for men. I think for women, you know, hot take, talk therapy could probably help because they really run on emotional their whole brain is wired to run on emotions. But for men, when we start running on emotions, we start to destabilize. You know, because that pushes us away from our gender identification behaviors. You know, men are not. That's why stoicism is a masculine trait. Bravery, loyalty, respect. These are all masculine characteristics. These are masculine behaviors. That's why it's called a man of your word. And it's not called a woman of your word. Mm-hmm. Because women are more emotional so they can communicate with children before language is a thing for them. You need that emotional expression to communicate with newborns and infants. Men, on the other hand, we don't work that way. We don't like to be talked to face about our emotions. You know, that's why if you ever talk to your boys, if you ever try to give advice, you always got to stand to the side of them. Don't stand in front of them. That's just threatening. If you stand shoulder to shoulder, this is the posture that men take when we're on hunting trips. Mm-hmm. You know, that's why you stand shoulder to shoulder with your boys. It's a phrase. Yeah. You know, so and all these ideas are getting muddied right now, and we need to bring a lot of these ideas back. We're in June. It's Men's Mental Health Month. Yeah. You know, so it's important. So for you guys out there, anyone struggling with mental health, DBT therapy, masculine behaviors, control your emotions. Stop saying I feel. Stop saying but. Mm-hmm. get rid of those language models, you'll start doing a lot better.
Yeah. And improve, whether that's your body, whether you're improving your body's ability to move, whether you're improving your cognition, you'll feel it if you're even just 1% better than you were the last week, like that, your emotions will rise with that.
100%. It's a good regulator.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Quentin. Anybody, send us videos, questions, like, comment, subscribe. We'll get to everything that's interesting. We'll include it in future episodes. And thanks for tuning in.
All right. Thank you.